What is up, my friends? We are back with another topical video. This time, delighted to say I'm joined by Ben Bocsák, editor of Anfield Watch, and of course, journalist extraordinaire. Ben, how are we?
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be on. I'm delighted to be on, really, and yeah, looking forward to this.
We really do appreciate you giving up some of your time to come and have a chat with us. And of course, you being a Hungarian football journalist, we're going to want to talk about Milos Kerkez and Dominik Szoboszlai. But before we do, you had a very interesting interview recently with Ahmed Atta regarding the Mohamed Salah contract situation, Ben. So I thought maybe you could give us a brief synopsis of that.
Yeah, so Ahmed is a very well-connected journalist in Egypt, and I did a video with him for Anfield Watch's YouTube channel where we sort of talked about Mohamed Salah's situation, sort of his Ballon d'Or claim at the moment. Obviously, he's having a brilliant season, but then we addressed the elephant in the room. And the most important thing, I think, right now when it comes to Mohamed Salah is his contract situation, his future. And we had a discussion about Liverpool's current offer, which was quite shocking, the kind of stuff that he revealed. And obviously, it went viral on social media too afterwards. And then whether he thinks Salah will stay at Liverpool or not. And yeah, neither, as a Liverpool fan, neither answers filled me with too much optimism. I think that's to put it lightly.
I remember when I first seen the news break about, and you're right, it absolutely did go viral. And I remember sitting back watching it and thinking, wow, how can Liverpool have offered a man that's performing so well less and significantly less, I believe Ahmed said as well, than he's currently on? I mean, it must have taken you by surprise.
Yeah, it did. I think you can see my reaction in the video. I was shocked, to say the least. And like I'm the same as you. Salah, I think, is having probably one of the best seasons of his career. He's probably one of the best players in the world, and I think the fact that he was offered less money than he's actually on right now, that's insulting to say the least, really.
And especially Ben, when we're talking about somebody who uses the word respect a lot because it's important to him, not just as a fan, but in his culture as well. I do feel like this is a very disrespectful act, personally, for the club to look at the situation and think that they could lowball him. I think most fans understood that yes, there will be some concerns about his age and 2, 3 years down the line, but the performances that he's putting in this season, and I would throw Virgil into that mix as well, have certainly indicated that he's far from falling away. And the difference, I would say, Ben, and I'd love your thoughts on this, the difference between himself and the likes of a Mesut Ozil is he's playing for legacy, he's playing for records, and he's still really hungry and has that desire to succeed. So I'd love your thoughts on what you think the club should do in this situation, because for me, it's pay the man.
It's the same for me. I think that goes without saying. Like, look, if it was any other player than Salah, then I would say, okay, maybe it makes sense to sort of lowball him or play sort of hard to get almost because in general, players at this age tend to decline. But this is Mohamed Salah we're talking about. He's a bit of a late bloomer, didn't quite really get going until he started playing for Roma and then obviously joined Liverpool. And that's when I think he really started to break into the scene. So he was sort of 24, 25. Up until that point, he hadn't played a lot of minutes or not as many as someone like a Jude Bellingham who broke into the scene at 16, or even a Trent Alexander-Arnold who started playing regularly at Liverpool at 18 years of age. So I think all of those factors mean he's probably got another 2, 3 years left in him at this level. Then you look at Mohamed Salah and the way he takes care of his body, the gym photos that he's always sharing on Instagram. And I probably add maybe he's got even 2 more years beyond those 2, 3 years that I said at the very highest level. So for me, if I was Liverpool, I would be offering him the wages that he wants and a 2, 3 year extension at the very minimum.
When you see Arsene Wenger even coming out and saying that he was coaching when Mohamed Salah came through, and I'm summarising here a little bit, but he said it used to take him 6 chances maybe to create a goal. Now he's 2 chances and he's creating a goal and an assist, and he's absolutely spot on with that. The efficiency to which Mohamed Salah has operated this season under Arne Slot has been, it's been something to behold.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is probably one of the best individual seasons that we're going to see in the Premier League. I didn't think he would be able to top sort of his first season in the Premier League when he broke onto the scene and obviously got a lot of goal contributions, and I think got quite close to winning the Ballon d'Or that year. Had Liverpool won the Champions League, maybe he would have won that year as well. But this season he's on another level. Like, no one is getting close to him when it comes to goals and assists in Europe's top 5 leagues, and the efficiency and the important goals that he's scoring as well. Like, he's making a difference in those important games against Man City, against Man United, against Arsenal. Like, he is the difference for Liverpool, and without him, I don't know where Liverpool would be this season.
I agree. Himself and Virgil, I think, have been huge difference makers, along with Alisson Becker as well, throughout the spine of this team. I could continue to speak about Mohamed Salah for a long time, Ben, but I want to move on to speak a little bit about your fellow countryman, Milos Kerkez. And we had an interesting little chat before we started recording, and you gave me a bit of a background to the character and the personality type of Milos. But the one thing that has come up in so many streams of mine have been people just focusing on that video in late January, I believe it was, where he spoke about not joining Liverpool. Could you give us some context on that as somebody who knows him far better than the rest of us?
Yeah, so I've interviewed Milos before. Sometimes see him when I go to Hungarian national team games. I see him in the mix zone quite a lot of times. And I think what you have to understand about Milos is he's someone who doesn't take life very seriously. He likes to wind people up. He likes to make jokes. And I think you can kind of see that on the pitch a little bit as well. He plays with that sort of attitude, that sort of character. So I think that video for people who don't know him might have been taken a little bit out of context. I think he was getting a lot of comments in that stream about will you join Liverpool, that kind of thing. And I mean, he's still a Bournemouth player. He's got to respect the fact that he's under contract there. Liverpool haven't made an offer for him, haven't sort of, he's not on the verge of joining Liverpool. He's going to be staying at Bournemouth until the end of the season. So I think maybe he got a little bit wound up and made those comments, but I wouldn't read too much into it because he is quite like an explosive character, to say the least. So I think those comments are just a sort of heat of the moment thing because he was getting irritated by all the sort of people saying, come to Liverpool, come to Liverpool. And I think in the Hungarian media as well, if I was him, I would be annoyed about the amount of articles that are written on the daily basis about him joining Liverpool. So I can kind of get his irritation in that sense as well, because obviously Dominik Szoboszlai is the number one headline in Hungary at the moment, unsurprisingly, ever since he moved to Liverpool. When it's his name, the articles sell, and that's why we see Virgil van Dijk not being named as Virgil van Dijk in Hungarian headlines anymore, but as Dominik Szoboszlai's teammate. So in Hungary, a lot of people are writing also about Milos Kerkez joining Dominik Szoboszlai, because after Szoboszlai, he is the second biggest Hungarian player that we have in the country at the moment. So I think the sheer amount of articles that are written on a daily basis about this Liverpool transfer and everyone in the country basically wanting it to happen, I can kind of see why he'd get sometimes a little bit irritated and push back on it.
Must be rather exciting as well, though. I mean, as a young kid growing up playing football, again, you represent your country, that's an honour. But then you come to the Premier League, a club like Bournemouth, who under Areola are playing incredible football, attacking football, and Milos has stood out as somebody who has an engine that can go on and on, much like Dominic, to be fair, he's similar. What do you think suitability wise to Arne Slot's system for Milos Kerkez? Do you think it would be one that will get the best out of his attributes?
I think it depends really. For me, I've always thought if Trent Alexander-Arnold stays, then Liverpool would probably want a more defensive-minded left back, maybe someone like Joao Hato, who's also been linked. I thought that might be a better fit. But if obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold leaves, which is a very real possibility at this moment in time with no extension and just a few months left of his contract, so that could happen, then I think Kerkez, if you look at the kind of left backs Arne Slot used at Feyenoord and AZ Alkmaar, really fits into that mold. He's explosive. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of defensive work rate. Like, he puts in a lot of effort to track back and get back. I think maybe sometimes with his positioning and discipline, he can definitely improve and develop. But the energy that he plays with, that is something Slot likes a lot, and I think that will make him a really good fit in this Liverpool team.
Have you been surprised as a Hungarian football fan to see quite how quickly he's taken to the Premier League? And we were speaking a little bit about Iriola beforehand and how suitable he is to his system. Has it been a surprise to you with being able to make that leap to the Premier League and perform so admirably?
To be honest, no. So I've known Milos because one of my good mates in Hungary used to coach him when he first arrived in the country. I just recently recorded a video with Richard as well, who was his former coach for Anfield Watch, just talking about Milos's journey. And if you look at that video, Richard was telling me way before that off camera when we were just as friends about him when he was 15 and he just arrived in his first training session, didn't speak a word of English, but immediately he was made captain of the team because of how good he was. And then within a few weeks, he was playing for the first team as a left back, because at academy level, he's actually playing as a cam, like a number 10 attacking midfielder and a left winger. And then when they moved him up to the first team, they thought that he would have a sort of better career path if he was playing as a left back, and he'd have more opportunities as a left back in the first team. And then, not long after that, a lot of European clubs sort of took notice of a 16-year-old playing in at first team level in Hungary, and it was only the second division, but that is still worthy of notice for scouts. And when Paolo Maldini calls you at 16 and says, "I like the way you play. I want you to come to AC Milan," you get the feeling that this is a special player. And then he goes to AC Milan. He does really well in the academy. I watched him actually play really well against Liverpool in the UEFA Youth League. And then after his first season there, he gets the call up to the first team for their preseason game, scores 2 goals in one of Milan's fixtures. But then they decide to buy Fode Ballo-Touré instead of promoting him to the first team. So he decides 6 months later, I want to go and play regular football. He goes to AZ Alkmaar, which was a really good decision. The Eredivisie is, a hotbed for young talent, and it was not long after Arne Slot had left that Milos joined the club. So, Arne Slot left the club with really good foundations for his assistant Pascal Janssen, who took over. And I mean, immediately goes into the first team and starts playing regularly. And he was making sort of sly tackle challenges with his head, like going in with his head first. Like you when you watched him, even then you knew like this is not an ordinary player. And I remember that's around the time when I first interviewed him as well. And just speaking to him, like you get the confidence that he oozes with is unreal. He's got a lot of belief in himself, and I think when you see that with young players, you normally can tell that they're going to go a long way.
Well, if I got that phone call from such a legend of the game, I'd probably feel rather confident in my own ability as well. But as we've seen, he's made the step up seamless as he's come into the Premier League. I could keep going on about Milos Kerkez for a long time, but I guess I just want to wind it down and ask, what do you think the likelihood is of him becoming a Liverpool player in the summer? Do you think it might be contingent, as you've mentioned, on Trent moving on?
Possibly. I think it's, there are a lot of other options for Liverpool as well. So I would add, apart from Milos Kerkez, Liverpool are looking at a few other left backs as well. Like Anfield Watch sort of revealed exclusively that they're looking at Lewis Hall as a potential option at Newcastle. There's obviously Joao Hato, whose name keeps being mentioned. And I think we are looking ahead to potentially what could be a pretty crazy summer when it comes to outgoings and incomings as well. And I think the finances is what's going to have to be looked at here, because in the summer, Manchester United wanted to sign him. Bournemouth wanted 40 million for him at the time. United simply couldn't afford that, as we said, because they are skint. So right now, I think Bournemouth's valuation is going to be in excess of the £50 million region. And I think for Liverpool, you just have to take into consideration who they're going to bring in, where they're going to spend money, if they're going to sign an Ishak and Alexander Isak. I don't know if Kerkez is affordable for Liverpool. Maybe you'd have to go a little bit cheaper, but it also just depends on who else is leaving the club too, how many sales, how much money you're going to make through sales and stuff like that. So I think it's very much dependent on not necessarily Milos himself, because despite what he said on that live stream, I think he would love to be teammates with Dominik and be close to him, because they're really good friends in the national team. So I think he would love to come up north and be nearby him. So I think it just depends on the club really, and whether they think 50 million is worth it, and whether they think they can afford him at that price range.
Well, you mentioned Dominik Szoboszlai, and he is really coming into his own this season. I mean, the number 8 shirt at Liverpool, as you're well aware, carries extra weight with it, particularly after Naby Keita not performing so well in the shirt. What has the reception and the reaction been to this season, and indeed his move to Liverpool over in Hungary? Because it felt like that deal just happened so quickly, just as his release clause was expiring.
Yeah, I have to admit I didn't sleep a lot during those days when his transfer was announced. But obviously, I think for Hungarian football, it was life altering for everyone who is a fan of Hungarian football and who follows football in Hungary, and even the people who don't follow football. Because for me, I get my grandma now calling me up and saying, how's Dominik doing at Liverpool? And sometimes she puts on Liverpool games. And before that, she had absolutely no interest in football
That is so
whatsoever.
cool, man. That is so cool to see that
And
reaction from your granny. That's brilliant.
and I'm not alone in this. All my Hungarian friends are the same. Everyone is talking about Dominik, and as I mentioned earlier, he is the number one name in the headlines. Like journalists are trying to find more and more creative ways to get him in headlines. And in general, if you go to Hungary, like he's got a McDonald's meal named after him now.
No
That you
way. Does he really?
Yeah, yeah,
Class.
he had I don't know if it's still going on, but he definitely had it during the Euros, where you could get it's called the Domi meal, and
Nice.
you could get it during the Euros. And yeah, he's got a partnership with them. He's got a partnership with Red Bull in Hungary, and with one of Hungary's biggest telephone companies as well. So you see him in a lot of advertisements and a lot of billboards and everything. It kind of reminds me of when I went to South Korea and I saw Son Heung-min. It was like a few months after Dominik had moved to Liverpool, and I was sending pictures to all my friends of Son Heung-min, like just finding his face in the most random places possible. And I was saying to my Hungarian friends, like, watch out, because this is going to happen to Dominik as well. And it has sort of happened, not to the extreme level, but I think we are sort of moving in that direction, especially if Liverpool win the Premier League. I think his fame is going to go through the roof. Right now, as we speak, every Liverpool game, the whole country is watching. Even Hungary's prime minister, like he put an Instagram video up the other day, where he showed his calendar for the week, and on Sunday there was just one sort of event, and it was the Liverpool Man City game, sort of penned into his diary.
Wow.
So I think that goes to show how popular Dominik is.
It doesn't hurt that he's incredibly handsome as well, does it? For all of these brands that he's working with, he must be a dream. On the pitch, though, I think it's fair to say this season under Arne Slot, we've really seen the progression of Dom to a system that seems to really suit himself and Curtis Jones in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting because when Arne Slot was appointed, I did this interview with Julian Jenner, who was teammates with Slot, and he was also a colleague of Slot at AZ Alkmaar. So he was a coach there, and he watched a lot of Arne Slot's training sessions. And funnily enough, he's also kind of like a bit of a cult hero in Hungary, because he played for Ferencváros, Hungary's biggest club. So I had contacts with him, and I called him up and I did an interview with him. And obviously, I asked him about Dominik as well, because he's got a Hungarian wife and he lives in Hungary and he coaches in Hungary now. So he knows Dominik very well too. And I asked him, like, how do you think he's going to fit into this system, and how good do you think he's going to be? And he said, like, he's going to be even better. Like, watch out. Like, the way Slot works with attacking midfielders, like, he's going to be incredible. And that is pretty much what's happened. I mean, Jenna also told me Liverpool are going to be unbeatable as well. And that's also happened, because Liverpool at this stage, I mean, touching wood, I don't want to jinx anything, but, Liverpool are quite unbeatable so far under Arne Slot. And Dominik is better than ever. And I think he can be even better. If you look at his sort of track record, he came into the Salzburg team, took a sort of a year and a half, I think, to get settled and really get going and become the main star in the team. It was the same at RB Leipzig, and I think really it's next season when we're going to see him kick on and be another level, like take over the Premier League really. And I really believe he can do that, because he did that in the Bundesliga and he did that in the Austrian Bundesliga, and I think he's got the potential to be an absolute superstar in this Liverpool team.
That really fills me full of excitement, Ben. It really does. Time has beaten us, unfortunately, but I'd love to have you back on after Liverpool win the Premier League to just tell us a little bit more about the reaction over in Hungary towards Dominik's achievements, and I'm sure we'll talk about Milos Kerkez as well. But I want to say a massive thank you to Ben for joining us, and to you guys, of course. We will, of course, put the links into Anfield Watch and all Ben's work. You'll find that in the description of the video. Do check out the channel and the great work that himself, Sam Maguire, and the people at Anfield Watch are doing. Ben, my man, it's been a pleasure to finally meet you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to me as well, and thank you much. Thank you very much for having me on.
An absolute pleasure, sir. Folks, we will talk soon. Don't forget, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it. And of course, do check out the guys' great work over at Anfield Watch as well. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.